Chosen one, something inside you has already crossed over, even if your eyes have not seen the proof yet. You may think you only made a small move recently, one quiet decision, one uncertain step, one moment where you finally stopped standing still. But heaven saw it differently. That step was not small. It was the sound of a locked door opening after years of invisible preparation. You need to understand this, because if you miss what has happened beneath the surface, you may walk into your next season still carrying the fear of the old one. For years, you have been waiting for a sign, waiting for confirmation, waiting for the moment when the pain finally explains itself. You have asked in silence, how much longer must I keep believing when nothing around me seems to change? How much longer must I remain faithful while others move forward, while doors open for people who did not carry half of what I carried? But what you did not see was that every delay was not empty time. Every silent season was not wasted space. Every rejection, every lonely night, every morning you forced yourself to keep going when your heart was tired, was becoming part of a structure being built inside you. You were not just surviving. You were being prepared to stand under weight that would have crushed the version of you who started this journey. And recently, without applause, without a crowd, without anyone fully understanding what it cost you, you moved. You took the step. Maybe you did not feel thunder. Maybe the room did not shake. Maybe nothing visible changed immediately. But in the invisible, something completed. A long process, a hidden process, a holy process, reached its appointed fullness. This message is here to show you what your last season was really doing, why your recent step was different, what has now been set in motion, and why the next few days of your life must be handled with discernment. Stay with this, because the first evidence may not arrive loudly. It may come quietly, and only the prepared will recognize it. Now look back at where you have been, not with shame, not with regret, but with new eyes. Because the years behind you were never just years, they were a hidden construction site. While people around you only saw delay, heaven was laying foundations. While they saw silence, heaven was strengthening roots. While they assumed nothing was happening, something sacred was being assembled in the places no one could reach. You have lived through seasons where the question in your heart became heavy. You did not always speak it out loud, but you carried it. How much longer before this changes? How much longer before the obedience produces fruit? How much longer before the tears, the discipline, the sacrifice, the lonely decisions, and the quiet faith begin to make sense? There were days when believing felt like labor. There were nights when hope did not feel beautiful. It felt expensive. And still, you continued. That is what makes this moment different. You did not arrive here because life was easy. You arrived because something in you refused to let pain become your final identity. You watched others receive what you were praying for. You saw doors open for people who seemed less tested. You had moments where your own heart wondered if you were being forgotten. But even then, you kept moving. That is why the step you took recently carries so much weight. It was not an ordinary decision. It was not just another attempt to improve your life. It was the movement of someone who had been trained by pressure, refined by silence, and emptied of the need to prove everything before obeying. You moved before the full picture appeared. You obeyed while uncertainty was still standing beside you. And after that step, something inside you may have changed. A quiet stillness, a lower tolerance for old environments, a sense that some conversations no longer fit, a strange confidence that does not remove fear but stands beneath it. These are not coincidences. These are signs that your life is recalibrating after a threshold has been crossed. The reason this threshold matters so deeply is because the last decade was not simply testing your patience. It was testing your capacity. There is a difference. Patience waits for something to arrive. Capacity becomes strong enough to carry what is arriving. And chosen one, what is coming into your life now, could not have been placed in the hands of the person you used to be. Not because that person was weak, but because that person was still being formed. You were placed under pressure that did not always make sense. You were stretched beyond comfort. You were asked to keep believing when your emotions had no more evidence to lean on. You were forced to develop discipline in hidden places, wisdom in confusing places, strength in lonely places, and discernment in places where people smiled but carried motives your spirit could feel. That was not punishment. That was preparation at a level most people would never understand. There were versions of you that had to be released before you could cross this line. The version that needed everyone to approve before moving. The version that kept shrinking its dream to make others comfortable. The version that confused delay with denial. The version that measured its worth by speed, applause, results, and visible progress. Those versions served a season, but they could not enter this one. And this is why certain relationships faded, certain rooms became uncomfortable, certain plans collapsed, and certain doors refused to open no matter how hard you knocked. Heaven was not blocking you from your future. Heaven was blocking what could not go with you. What felt like rejection was often protection. What felt like isolation was often incubation. What felt like loss was often space being created for what could finally match your assignment. You were not being emptied because your life was ending. You were being cleared because something greater needed room. And now that you have crossed the threshold, you must stop mourning the things that could not survive the journey. They were never meant to carry the weight of this next season. There is a promise hidden inside seasons like yours, but many people misunderstand it. They hear restoration and think it means returning to what was lost, going back to the place where everything broke, receiving only enough to replace what disappeared. But divine restoration is not small repair. It is not heaven handing you a receipt and giving you the exact amount back. When God restores, He does not merely return what was taken. He makes whole what was wounded, He completes what was unfinished, and He repays in a measure that proves the loss did not have the final word. This is why you cannot judge the next season by the size of the last wound. You cannot look at the years that felt eaten by delay and assume they are gone forever. Nothing faithful was wasted. Nothing obedient was ignored. Every private prayer, every time you chose restraint instead of bitterness, every time you kept your hands clean when life gave you reasons to become hard, every time you got up and moved forward without visible proof, it was counted. And this is where your story begins to resemble the stories of those who were hidden before they were revealed. Joseph had a dream long before he had a throne. Between the promise and the palace, he faced betrayal, false accusation, confinement, and years of being misunderstood. But the prison did not cancel the dream. The pit did not cancel the assignment. The silence did not mean heaven had changed its mind. It meant the architecture was still being prepared. The door opened when the formation was complete. That is what you must understand about your own life. The door did not open because you finally suffered enough. It opened because what suffering was allowed to build in you had reached fullness. Your character had been tested. Your discernment had been sharpened. Your dependence had been purified. Your motives had been searched in places where no one could applaud you. So do not call those years wasted. They were expensive, yes. They were painful, yes. But they were also holy. They were preparing you for a return that will not merely balance what you lost. It will exceed what you thought could ever be restored. But there is another layer you must see, because what was being built was not only around you, it was being built in you. A blessing of this size is never only provision, it is a commissioning. It is heaven matching resources to assignment, doors to identity, influence to responsibility, and increase to the person who has been formed enough to carry it without being destroyed by it. That is why your next season is not random. It is not simply a reward thrown into your life because you endured long enough. It has been shaped around who you became while no one was watching. The pressure revealed you, the waiting refined you, the losses clarified you, the silence trained you to hear beyond noise. And now you are stepping into something that requires you to finally accept the identity your pain was preparing you to carry. You are a pioneer. You were never meant to simply follow paths that already existed. There were seasons when you had no map, no mentor who fully understood, no confirmation strong enough to make the road feel safe, and still you moved. That was not confusion, that was trailblazing. You were walking first, so that one day others could walk with less fear because you made it through. You are a spiritual warrior. Not because you never felt tired, but because tiredness did not get the final vote. You faced opposition in your mind, in your emotions, in your relationships, in your circumstances, and still you refused to surrender your assignment. You learned how to stand when standing was all you had left. You are a cycle breaker. The step you took recently did not only move you forward, it interrupted an old pattern. Something that had repeated for years, maybe even through generations, lost its authority when you chose differently. You are also a builder. What is coming is not only for your comfort. It is meant to create structure, stability, refuge, and legacy. And you are a seer. You moved before all the evidence arrived, because something deeper than fear recognized the moment. What is in you saw further than what was around you. Now let me make this practical, because many chosen ones hear a word about destiny, but then return to daily life, unsure how to recognize whether what they did was truly significant. So I want you to look at the step you recently took and examine it with honesty. Not through fear, not through the opinions of people who never carried your burden, but through the deeper evidence that marks a threshold move. The first sign is cost. A real threshold always costs something. It may cost comfort, approval, certainty, reputation, familiar routines, or the version of safety you built around your old life. If the step you took required you to release something you once depended on, do not immediately assume that means you made a mistake. Some doors do not open until your hands are empty enough to receive what is next. The second sign is uncertainty. A threshold move rarely comes with every detail explained. You do not usually see the whole road before you move. You see enough light for the next step, and something inside you knows that staying where you are would be more dangerous than walking forward without full proof. That kind of movement is not recklessness when it is born from deep knowing. It is obedience under pressure. The third sign is the quiet knowing beneath the fear. Fear may have been present, your hands may have trembled, your mind may have asked questions. But underneath the noise, there was something steady. Something that did not scream, but remained. Something that said, this is the moment, this is the line, this is where the old pattern ends. And if your step carried cost, uncertainty, and that quiet knowing, then you must stop reducing it to an ordinary decision. It was not ordinary, it was a spiritual crossing. It was the moment your inner formation met outward action. It was the point where 10 years of hidden obedience became one visible movement. So do not despise the step because it looked small. Seeds look small too, until the ground begins to break. But after a threshold is crossed, there is a danger that almost every chosen one faces. It does not usually come as a loud attack. It comes quietly, after the step has been taken, after the courage has already been spent, after the visible world still looks almost the same. The mind begins searching for evidence. And when evidence does not appear quickly, doubt starts building a case. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I moved too soon. Maybe nothing actually changed. Maybe I was only tired, emotional, desperate for a sign. Maybe this is just another season where I believed something was shifting, only to be disappointed again. Chosen one, you need to recognize that voice before you obey it. That voice is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is wounded protection. Your nervous system remembers the years of hoping without seeing. It remembers the doors that did not open when you prayed. It remembers the people who left, the efforts that seemed unrewarded, the moments when you gathered strength and still had to wait. So now, even after the threshold has been crossed, part of you may try to protect you from believing too much. It may tell you to shrink your expectations so disappointment cannot reach you as deeply. But doubt after obedience is not proof that obedience was wrong. Sometimes it is only the echo of a long waiting season leaving your body. Do not let the old pain interpret the new season. Do not let yesterday's silence become today's theology. Something can be real before it is visible. A seed can be alive before it breaks the soil. A door can be opened before you fully understand what is behind it. So when doubt rises, do not panic. Return to what you know. Did the step cost you something real? Did you move before the outcome was confirmed? Was there a quiet knowing beneath the fear? If the answer is yes, then stay steady. The absence of immediate evidence is not the absence of movement. It is simply the space between activation and manifestation. Now here is how you protect what has been activated. You stop measuring this season with the clock of the old one. The old season trained you to expect delay, to expect silence, to expect effort without immediate fruit. But this is not the same season. You cannot bring an old measuring system into a new movement and expect to read it correctly. If you do, you will call progress confusion. You will call preparation failure. You will call quiet movement nothing, simply because it does not look like what your anxious mind demanded. The first thing you must do is stop asking the new season to prove itself according to the pain of the old season. What happened before taught you endurance, but it was never meant to become a prison for your expectation. You are allowed to believe again. You are allowed to expect good without apologizing for it. You are allowed to stand in the space between the step and the evidence without turning back emotionally. The second thing is to protect the silence around what is being formed. Not every person deserves access to the early stages of your becoming. Some people will question what they were never assigned to understand. Some will measure your obedience through their own fear. Some will ask for explanations not because they want clarity, but because they want to pull you back into a version of yourself they could recognize. Do not let that happen. A seed does not need a crowd around it when it first breaks through the soil. It needs covering. It needs space. It needs the right environment. In the same way, what has begun in you does not need constant announcement. It needs stewardship. This is the moment to move with quiet discipline. Speak less. Observe more. Let the small confirmations arrive without forcing them into performance. A conversation may open, a door may shift, a name may come back, a clarity may settle. Do not dismiss these things as coincidence. They are early signs of return. They are the first movements of what 10 years have been preparing to release. Now I want you to understand the deeper truth behind all of this. The 10 years were not a punishment charged against your life. They were an investment placed inside your life. Every season you thought was only taking from you was also depositing something into you. Every silent morning, every unanswered prayer, every moment when you had to keep functioning while your soul was tired, every time you chose integrity when bitterness would have been easier, all of it was being recorded in the invisible. You thought you were waiting for the blessing, but the blessing was being formed around the person you were becoming. You thought you were surviving the decade, but the decade was being built into your character. You thought one step changed everything, but the truth is deeper than that. That recent step was not the only activation. It was the final note in a song heaven had been composing through your obedience for years. Every time you stayed faithful when walking away from your assignment would have made sense, something activated. Every time you refused to let rejection define you, something activated. Every time you kept your heart soft in a world that kept giving you reasons to harden, something activated. Every time you chose the harder truth over the easier comfort, something activated. The step you took recently did not create the blessing from nothing. It completed a chain of hidden yeses that had been building for a long time. So do not look at your past as a field of wasted years. Look at it as holy construction. The foundation was laid in the nights no one saw. The walls were raised through pressure. The doors were carved through obedience. The roof was placed through endurance. And now you are standing inside something that once only existed in the unseen. This is why the return cannot be small. A decade of formation does not produce a minor upgrade. What comes next must carry the weight of what it took to prepare you. Receive that without shrinking it. And now, chosen one, before this message closes, I want you to carry 3 instructions into the season ahead, not as ideas to admire, but as spiritual laws to live by. The first is this: do not minimize what you just did. When people ask why you moved, why you changed, why you stepped away, why you finally obeyed what had been stirring inside you for so long, resist the urge to make it sound smaller so they can understand it. You do not owe anyone a reduced version of your obedience. The second is this: steward the silence. What is coming toward you does not need to be announced before it has taken form. Some blessings are most vulnerable in their earliest stage, not because they are weak, but because they are holy. Protect your peace. Protect your focus. Protect the quiet place where God is still finishing details you cannot yet explain. The third is this: learn to recognize the small confirmations. The first signs may not look dramatic. They may appear as one conversation, one unexpected opening, one sudden clarity, one relationship shifting, one opportunity returning, one calmness settling over a decision that used to terrify you. Do not ignore these movements. They are the early sounds of the return beginning to arrive. And hear this clearly: you did not survive 10 years of pressure for a small outcome. You did not carry silence, rejection, delay, loneliness, discipline, and hidden obedience just to receive something ordinary. What is moving toward you has been measured against what you were formed through. The return will not merely equal the investment, it will exceed it. You are not the same person who entered that decade. You are the pioneer who kept walking without a map. You are the warrior who stood when quitting looked reasonable. You are the cycle breaker who ended what tried to repeat. You are the builder whose foundation has finally reached completion. You are the seer who moved before the evidence arrived. So walk carefully now, not with fear, but with reverence. The waiting season has ended. The threshold has been crossed. What was prepared in secret is beginning to move toward you in the open.